My daughter, Sarah, gave me a bottle of wine for my 75th birthday. What she didn't imagine was that I would give that gift to her husband David's mother, Mrs. Jenkins, and that bottle would change our lives forever. I remember the exact moment. Her hug was quick, almost an afterthought, cold against my cheek. She barely looked at me as she handed me the beautifully wrapped package. It was so neat, so perfect, as if someone else had wrapped it for her, just to get it done. In that brief silent moment, I felt a pang, a deep ache in my chest. It wasn't a celebration I felt, but more like a goodbye, a way to fulfill some distant obligation without having to truly be there, without spending any real time or affection on me. I held the package, the expensive weight of it in my hands, and felt the glossy paper. Once it was unwrapped, the label shone back at me, a wine I recognized from fancy magazines, something I would never, ever dream of buying for myself. It was far too grand for my simple life. A small part of me, the part that always tries to find the good in things, tried to reason it away. Maybe I was being unfair. Sarah was always rushed, always busy, her head buzzing with 1,000 things. Maybe this was just her way of showing she cared, a practical gesture for someone like her. But the feeling of silent humiliation, of quiet rejection, settled deep inside me. I took the bottle to the pantry, a cool, dark place where things are stored away for later, sometimes forever. I thought about opening it on a special occasion, one that felt worthy of such a fine gift. But then, a wave of familiar loneliness washed over me. Loneliness had taught me a great many things over the years, mostly how to live without many expectations. I had learned to find contentment in the small joys, like the sunshine hitting my porch in the mornings, or the way my rose bushes bloomed in spring. A wine like this felt out of place in my quiet world, like a stranger at a private dinner. So I placed it carefully on a high shelf, thinking that special occasion might never really come. My life had become a tapestry of small, predictable threads, and a grand, expensive wine didn't seem to fit into it. Still, a strange feeling lingered with me, a quiet hum beneath the surface of my skin. It was more than just the usual ache of a mother feeling a daughter's distance. It was a premonition, one of those subtle whispers you learn to hear when you've lived a long time and seen a lot of life. It was as if that elegant, festive object, so out of place in my simple pantry, carried a weight that didn't belong to it, a story it was destined to tell. It felt heavy, not just with its liquid contents, but with something unseen. I knew, without knowing how, that this wasn't just a gift. Little did I know, as I closed the pantry door that day, that inside that bottle, there wasn't just wine. My name is Martha. I'm 75 years old now. 75. It feels like a lifetime, and it has been. A quiet life mostly. I was a seamstress, you see, my entire life. From the time I was a young girl, bent over fabric, making stitches that seemed to hold dreams together. Each dress, each suit, each simple curtain, it was all part of me. My fingers, they remember the feel of silk, of rough linen, of sharp needles. They still have the calluses, even now, though they don't have the same steady grip they once did. Not for a needle, anyway. Now my days are measured by the simple things. The way the morning sun spills over the edge of my porch, warm and golden. The way my rose bushes push out new buds, reaching for the light. And of course, by the memories. So many memories of Arthur, my late husband. He's been gone for nearly 10 years now, but it feels like yesterday sometimes. We lived together in this house for 50 years. Can you imagine? Half a century. Every single corner of this place holds a story, a laugh, a quiet moment. The kitchen where we had our morning coffee, the living room where we'd read side by side, even the old shed out back where he kept his tools. It's all here, soaked into the wood and the very air. Arthur was a good man. He taught me so much, especially how to be strong. He always said, "Martha, you have to stand on your own 2 feet. Don't depend on anyone to hold your ground. Your roof, your dignity. Those are yours." He said it often. He believed in being independent, truly independent. And he taught me to believe it too. I remember the very last time we talked about it, just before he passed. He was weaker then, but his eyes, they were still so clear, so full of that quiet wisdom. He held my hand, his grip surprisingly firm, and looked deeply into my eyes. "Martha," he whispered, his voice raspy, "this house is your safe harbor. Always remember that. Here you are the owner of everything. Don't let anyone, not even our daughter, make you feel small within your own home." At the time, I just squeezed his hand. I thought it was just Arthur being Arthur, maybe a little overprotective, a concern from someone afraid to leave his loved ones. Sarah, our Sarah, was our only daughter, our treasure, the light of our lives. The idea that she would ever want to make me feel small in my own home, it seemed impossible. I dismissed it as a dying man's worry, a tender, sweet worry, but a worry nonetheless. I thought, how could my own daughter, the child we raised with so much love, ever be a threat to my peace? My hands, like I said, aren't as steady for fine sewing anymore, but they still tend the earth with the same care. The roses need me. The little vegetable patch out back, that's my solace. My routine is simple, you see. I wake early, before the sun gets too hot. Morning coffee, black, just the way I like it, listening to the old radio crackle with the news. Then I slowly tidy the house. No rush. Each dust mote dancing in the sunlight. A reminder of the quiet passage of time. And if I feel like it, a chat with Mrs. Henderson or Mr. Peterson at the gate. Just neighborly talk. The weather, the price of eggs, the usual. It was a small life, yes, but it was mine, all mine. I truly believed that the love I poured into my daughter, all those years, all that sacrifice, would be my guarantee. The guarantee of a peaceful, secure old age. A time of quiet contentment, surrounded by the warmth of family. I imagined Sarah would visit often, bring her children, make the house feel full again. I thought that bond, that mother-daughter bond, was unbreakable. It was the foundation of everything. I built my entire later life around that belief. But what she didn't yet know, what she couldn't possibly have imagined, was that I had learned my husband's lesson very, very well. Arthur's words, echoing in my mind, had taken root deep inside me. I had listened. I had understood. And I was about to prove it. I had learned Arthur's lesson. I understood it deeply. But Sarah, my daughter, She didn't know how much. In recent months, though, the visits from Sarah, my own daughter, well, they started to change. They grew rarer. Sometimes weeks would pass without a call or a knock at the door. And when she did come, they were shorter, almost like she was rushing through a checklist. It wasn't the Sarah I remembered, the one who used to linger, telling me about her day, asking for advice. Now, it felt different, always rushed, always with her husband, David, my son-in-law, by her side. He's always been a quiet man, polite enough, but lately he just seemed to follow her lead. And the conversation, it always drifted to the same thing, always. She'd look around my living room, the one I'd filled with a lifetime of memories, and her eyes would just skim over everything, impatient, restless. "Mom," she'd start, her voice a little too sweet, a little too loud, almost as if she was talking to someone hard of hearing. "This house is just so big for you alone now." It wasn't a question, you understand. It was an observation, a judgment almost, disguised as concern. Then David would nod along, my son-in-law, always supporting Sarah. "We worry about you, Martha," he'd say, shaking his head slowly. "A fall, an emergency? What if something happens and no one's here to help?" They'd paint a picture of me, fragile and helpless, alone in this big house, as if I couldn't manage. "Have you thought about moving into a smaller, safer apartment?" Sarah would press, her gaze fixed, waiting for an answer. But not an answer that meant I was okay right here. No, it was an answer that meant I was ready to pack up and leave. Every single time they brought it up, it felt like a cold fist squeezing my chest, a deep, familiar ache. It wasn't real concern I saw in their eyes, not heartfelt worry for my well-being. It was something else entirely. Haste, impatience. It was as if my very presence here, in the home I had helped Arthur build, stone by stone, memory by memory, was suddenly an impediment to their plans. My home, my sanctuary, the place Arthur called my safe harbor, was a problem for them. I'd try to change the subject, you know. I'd offer them coffee, fresh from the pot, brewing especially for their visit. "Oh, you must be thirsty from your drive," I'd say, trying to sound cheerful, trying to invite a different kind of conversation. I'd point out a new bloom on my rose bush outside the window. "Look how lovely this one turned out, Sarah. It's just like the one your father planted, remember?" But it was like talking to a wall. Their eyes would glaze over, a dismissive look, and then, almost immediately, they'd loop back to the house, to my supposed vulnerability. Their subtle contempt, it was like a constant chill in the air, a draft I couldn't block out. It seeped into my bones, making me feel like a burden, like I was truly in the way. Then came my 75th birthday, 75 years. A milestone, right? I had held on to a little hope, a flicker of light, that maybe for this special day, things would be different. Sarah had promised a party, a gathering. "Mom, we'll do something wonderful for your big day," she'd said weeks before, a bright smile on her face. But then the excuses started. First it was David's work trip. Something urgent came up. Then some unforeseen circumstance, a vague, "we just can't make it work this weekend, Mom." Each excuse chipped away at that little flicker of hope until there was almost nothing left. In the end, she appeared on the actual day, alone. No party, no gathering, just her and that bottle of wine in her hand. The one I told you about, beautifully wrapped. She came in, gave me that quick, cold hug, barely touching me, and that smile that it didn't reach her eyes. Not at all. It was just a shape her lips made. Empty. She put the package in my hands, almost as if she couldn't wait to get rid of it, to be done with her obligation. I remember the expensive weight of it, the silence that followed. That gift wasn't affection. It wasn't a celebration of me. It was an excuse, plain and simple. An excuse to be here for 10 minutes and then be gone. And it was that silence, the one after she handed me the bottle, after she finished her quick apology about the party, the one that hung heavy in my living room as she stood there, looking at her watch, ready to leave. That silence was the most deafening sound of all. It was in that profound quiet that something inside me began to confirm the depth of the chasm, the one that had grown, slowly, steadily, between us. My daughter and me, it wasn't just a small crack anymore. It was a wide, deep canyon, and I was standing on one side alone, with her empty smile and that heavy, silent bottle of wine. The betrayal had a face, and it was my own daughter's face. After that terrible fight, after the shock of David's call, a cold clarity, sharp as a winter morning, washed over me. It wasn't a clarity that brought tears or screams or the urge to pick up the phone and accuse Sarah of what I now knew in my gut. No, it was a different kind of feeling entirely. It was quiet. It was steady. It was a resolve I hadn't known I possessed, but one that had been building inside me for a long, long time. I remembered Arthur's words, clear as a bell, ringing in my ears. "Martha, this house is your safe harbor. Here, you are the owner of everything. Don't let anyone, not even our daughter, make you feel small within your own home." His voice had been raspy then, but full of such conviction. I dismissed it as an old man's worry. But now, his words were my anchor. They were the ground beneath my feet. I didn't hesitate. My steps felt sure, stronger than they had in days. I walked into my bedroom, the one Arthur and I had shared for 50 years. It felt like walking into a sanctuary, a place where all my quiet strength resided. I went straight to the old wardrobe, the one with the carved oak doors that creaked just so. It held not just our clothes, but our history. I opened the bottom drawer, the one where we kept our most important papers, the ones that meant something. And there it was, the folder. I pulled it out, my fingers brushing over the thick paper. Inside, nestled amongst other documents, was the deed to the house. The proof, the undeniable legal proof of my strength. It was Arthur's legacy, yes, but it was mine too. Every stitch of it. I carried the folder back to my favorite armchair, the one by the window where the afternoon sun always settled. I sat down, the deed resting on my lap, feeling its weight. And then I just sat, I didn't rush. I started to piece things together like a complicated quilt. The pattern was suddenly so clear. All those conversations about the house being too big for me alone. The impatient looks. The way Sarah would shift from foot to foot, always in a hurry to leave. The persistent pressure to move into a smaller, safer apartment. And then, that expensive, impersonal bottle of wine. The gift that wasn't a gift, but an excuse. Their plan, it was right there, laid bare. It wasn't about my safety, not really. It was about getting me out of the way, removing the problem, so they could sell this property, my home. The thought sent a cold shiver down my spine, but it wasn't fear. It was a hardening, the poisoning of Mrs. Jenkins. Poor Eleanor. It wasn't meant to kill me, I realized then. It was meant to incapacitate me, to make me seem senile, confused, frail. To justify an incapacitation order, a legal way to take control of my affairs, of my property, so they could sell it right out from under me. But their plan, so cruel and calculating, had failed. Tragically, yes, for Eleanor, but failed in its original intent. It had gone to the wrong address. And now, they had a much bigger problem than an old woman living alone. I closed my eyes for a moment, took a deep breath. No, I decided I wouldn't act with my heart. My heart was too broken, too vulnerable right now. I would act with my head, calmly, strategically. Like Arthur always said, you have to stand on your own 2 feet. I put the deed back into its folder, setting it aside carefully. And then I picked up a pad of paper and a pen. I started writing everything down. The dates of their visits, each time they brought up the house, the exact topics of our conversations, how they tried to twist my words. The precise time of David's phone call. Every single detail. Each memory, even the painful ones, became a piece of evidence. When the police came back, as they surely would, I would cooperate, calmly, without emotion. I would state only the facts, just the facts, Martha. No tears, no accusations. I wasn't going to play the victim here. Not anymore. They thought I was old, frail, easy to dismiss. They thought I was a worn-out seamstress, ready to be put in a drawer and forgotten. But they were wrong. I was going to wait. I was going to wait for the exact right moment. And then I was going to show them that this old seamstress, the one they thought was fragile and disposable, still knew exactly how to stitch her own destiny, piece by careful piece, and I wouldn't miss a single thread. The news? It spread like wildfire, faster than gossip always does in a small neighborhood, faster than any good news ever could. It flew from house to house, whispered over fences, carried on the breeze through open windows. Everyone knew, or thought they knew. Some of my neighbors, the ones who had known me for years, they looked at me with pity. Their eyes would soften when they saw me tending my roses, a sad shake of the head. Poor Martha, they seemed to say. How could this happen to her? Others, though, looked at me differently, with suspicion. Their glances were quick, cold, darting away if I met their eyes. It was like I had a mark on me, a stain. And Sarah and David, my daughter and my son-in-law, they wasted no time to defend themselves, to clear their names, they began to spin their own version of the story. It wasn't me who was the victim, not in their narrative. They started spreading things, quiet whispers at first, then louder, to anyone who would listen. They said I was confused, forgetful, that I was an old woman losing her mind, that maybe, just maybe, I had bought the wine myself from somewhere suspicious and simply mistaken it for their gift. They painted a picture of a senile elderly woman, a Martha who wasn't quite right in the head, trying to shift the blame, all of it, onto my supposed mental frailty. They were so quick to make me seem less than myself, less than human, almost. It was a cruel thing to do, and it worked. For the first time in my 75 years, I felt the true heavy weight of absolute solitude. It wasn't just the quiet house or the empty chair across from me at the dinner table. No, this was different. This was abandonment. Relatives, my nieces and nephews, who used to call me every single week just to chat, to ask how I was doing. Their calls stopped. The phone stayed silent. When I saw them at the market, they'd pretend not to see me, turning their heads, rushing past. My home, this house that had always been a place of open doors, a gathering spot for family and friends, it became an island of silence. Each time the phone did ring, my heart would leap, then freeze in my chest. A small, foolish part of me would hope it was Sarah, her voice, remorseful, apologetic. But it never was. It was always a wrong number or a telemarketer. Her silence was louder than any accusation. It was abandonment becoming concrete, real. With each passing day, without a word, without a sign of her, ingratitude materializing. The height of the pain, the sharpest stab of all, came when I heard it. It was from Mrs. Henderson, my kind neighbor, who always meant well. She came over one morning, her face etched with concern, and told me in a hushed voice what she'd overheard. Sarah was organizing a family meeting, a meeting to decide what to do with me, my own daughter. They were going to gather in my own home, my living room, where Arthur and I had watched our daughter grow up, where we celebrated holidays, where we planned our lives. They were going to sit there in my space and discuss my future, as if I were a broken object, a piece of furniture that no longer served a purpose. They wanted me out of my home, away from my memories, away from everything that was mine. They wanted me locked away somewhere, a place where my voice could no longer be heard, where I would no longer be a problem. They thought they had me cornered. They thought they had won. But what they forgot, in their rush, in their arrogance, was one simple thing. They forgot who the true owner of that stage was. They forgot who really owned this house and who still had a say. And I was waiting for them. I didn't expel them. Not that day. Not ever. They left on their own, quickly, after I showed them those papers. Their faces, pale with shock, were all the answer I needed. The justice I sought wasn't about making them suffer, not really. It wasn't about vengeance, the kind that burns you up inside. No, what I truly wanted, what I had always wanted, was respect for myself, for Arthur's legacy, for my home. And in that moment, when the silence in my living room was thick with their disbelief, I got it. They saw me. They saw the woman who owned her ground, and not just the land. The criminal case, the one about Mrs. Jenkins's poisoning, that ran its course. It was out of my hands. The police did their job, the lawyers did theirs, and the law, well, the law took care of Sarah and David. I didn't follow every detail, didn't need to. It felt like something separate from me, a heavy shadow that finally lifted. My victory, my real victory, was something else entirely. It was staying right here, in my own home, standing tall, the owner of my own story, not just a character in theirs. The relationship with Sarah, my daughter, it just broke. It wasn't a sudden angry snap, not with shouts and accusations. It was more like a slow, quiet crumbling. There was nothing left there to be saved. No foundation, no real connection. When love is built on self-interest, when it's just a way to get something, it's not love at all. It's a contract, and that contract had been broken spectacularly with a poisoned bottle of wine. I didn't hate her. The anger had faded, replaced by a profound sadness, a kind of emptiness where a mother's heart used to swell with pride and affection. But the space she once filled in my life, it was just gone. And surprisingly, it didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. My routine, it came back to me. The simple rhythm of my days, morning coffee, tending the roses, watching the sunset from the porch swing. But it wasn't quite the same. It returned with a new strength, a quiet resilience I hadn't felt before. That old hammock on the porch, where I used to sit and feel the loneliness wrap around me, it wasn't just a solitary pastime anymore. It felt like a throne of resilience, a place where I could sit, rock gently, and know that I had faced a storm and weathered it. The flowers in my garden, they seemed more vibrant somehow. Their colors richer, their blooms brighter. They weren't just pretty things. They felt like a celebration of my permanence, a quiet cheer for the fact that I was still here, rooted. And then there was Mrs. Jenkins. Eleanor, my dear Eleanor. She recovered, slowly, steadily. And when she was strong enough, she came to me. We sat on my porch, drinking tea, not coffee, because of the lingering worry. We didn't need to say much. We had been united in pain, in that terrible, shocking betrayal. But now we were united in triumph. Her recovery, my resolve, our coffee afternoons, or rather, our tea afternoons, they became the bright spots of my week. They were filled with quiet laughter, with stories of our past lives, with small, hopeful plans for the future. No more lamentations about what had been, or what had gone wrong. Just two women sitting together, enjoying the simple comfort of true companionship. She understood. She knew. And that was enough. Life went on. Simpler. Quieter, yes. But also, surprisingly, more honest. The quiet wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with a different kind of peace. I learned a hard lesson, but a profound one. True family, I realized, isn't just imposed by blood. It's built carefully, thoughtfully, brick by brick, by respect, by shared moments of honesty and kindness, by unwavering support. My home, this house Arthur called my safe harbor, it absolutely continued to be that, my sanctuary. But now I understood something deeper. The true shelter wasn't just in the solid walls, in the familiar rooms, in the memories soaked into every corner. The true shelter was within myself. It was in the strength I found when I thought I had none left. It was in the clarity that cut through the pain. And that discovery, that deep, quiet understanding, brought me a peace that no betrayal, no matter how sharp or how cruel, could ever steal again. It was mine, all mine. It was mine, all mine. That peace, that deep understanding, it truly was mine. But it didn't come easily, you know? Life has a way of teaching you its hardest lessons when you least expect them, often when you think you've seen it all. I learned the hard way that the greatest betrayals don't come with a shout, not with a sudden angry outburst. They come with a smile and with a gift, a beautifully wrapped package handed to you with a practiced, empty grace. They arrive disguised, you see, dressed up as care, as concern, sometimes as an expensive wine. It's the quiet ones that leave the deepest cuts, the ones you never saw coming from the people who should have loved you unconditionally. And you? Have you ever been treated as if you were invisible by those who should see and protect you most? It's a strange thing, this journey of life. Especially as you get older, you spend so many years, so much of yourself, pouring love into others, your children, your family. You want them to be happy, to succeed. Often, for love, we dim ourselves a little so that another can shine. We step back. We shrink to fit into the plans of those we love, believing that our sacrifice is part of that love. We make ourselves smaller, quieter. We accommodate. We give way. We give until we feel thin, almost transparent. But how much can we shrink before we simply disappear? Before they forget you're even there? No one, absolutely no one, should ever be made to feel like old furniture in their own home, just sitting there, waiting to be discarded when they're no longer useful, when they're just in the way. It's a bitter pill to swallow, knowing that you might be seen that way by your own flesh and blood. The truth is, we only truly discover the strength we possess when being strong is the only choice left. When there's no other path, when the world around you crumbles, and you find yourself standing alone, holding up the pieces. For me, that strength was in an old folder, just a simple, worn folder, kept quietly in a drawer. It held the proof, the undeniable truth of my place, my worth, my ownership. But your strength, your quiet power, might not be in a deed. It might be in your voice, in your story, in the unwavering core of your dignity. That inner knowing, that quiet, fierce belief in who you are, what you've lived and what you deserve. And that, dear friend, no one ever can take from you. It was mine, all mine. That peace, that deep understanding, it truly was mine. But it didn't come easily, you know. Life has a way of teaching you its hardest lessons when you least expect them, often when you think you've seen it all. I learned the hard way that the greatest betrayals don't come with a shout, not with a sudden, angry outburst. They come with a smile and with a gift, a beautifully wrapped package handed to you with a practiced, empty grace. They arrive disguised, you see, dressed up as care, as concern, sometimes as an expensive wine. It's the quiet ones that leave the deepest cuts, the ones you never saw coming from the people who should have loved you unconditionally. And you? Have you ever been treated as if you were invisible by those who should see and protect you most? It's a strange thing, this journey of life, especially as you get older. You spend so many years, so much of yourself, pouring love into others, your children, your family. You want them to be happy, to succeed. Often, for love, we dim ourselves a little so that another can shine. We step back. We shrink to fit into the plans of those we love, believing that our sacrifice is part of that love. We make ourselves smaller, quieter. We accommodate. We give way. We give until we feel thin, almost transparent. But how much can we shrink before we simply disappear? Before they forget you're even there? No one, absolutely no one, should ever be made to feel like old furniture in their own home, just sitting there, waiting to be discarded when they're no longer useful, when they're just in the way. It's a bitter pill to swallow, knowing that you might be seen that way by your own flesh and blood. The truth is, we only truly discover the strength we possess when being strong is the only choice left. When there's no other path, when the world around you crumbles and you find yourself standing alone, holding up the pieces. For me, that strength was in an old folder, just a simple, worn folder, kept quietly in a drawer. It held the proof, the undeniable truth of my place, my worth, my ownership. But your strength, your quiet power, might not be in a deed. It might be in your voice, in your story, in the unwavering core of your dignity. That inner knowing, that quiet, fierce belief in who you are, what you've lived, and what you deserve. And that, dear friend, no one ever can take from you. It's a quiet knowing, a deep hum inside you that says, I am here, I am worthy, I am whole. This peace, you see, it isn't something you buy or something someone gives you. It's something you discover, sometimes in the wreckage of your own life. It blossoms in the quiet moments after the storm, when you realize you're still standing. And it's the most beautiful garden I've ever tended. More beautiful than any rose bush, because this one grows inside. I sit on my porch now, in the soft twilight, and the world feels different. Not because the world has changed, but because I have. The house still creaks, the wind still whispers through the leaves, but the quiet no longer echoes with loneliness. It's filled with a gentle hum of contentment. The memories of Arthur are still here, always, a comforting warmth. But now, they're mingled with the quiet strength he taught me to find. He was right, you know. This house is my safe harbor. But the truest harbor, I finally understand, is the one you build within yourself. It's a place where you are the sole owner, the captain of your own ship, no matter how choppy the seas get. The days pass, simple and true. I still tend my roses, still sip my morning coffee, still chat with Eleanor. Our afternoons are a balm, a gentle reminder that some bonds are forged in fire and emerge stronger. We talk about small things, about the patterns of the clouds, the changing seasons, the quiet joys of a well-baked scone. There's a lightness in her laughter, and in mine too. We found a kind of freedom, a release from the weight of what had been, in simply being ourselves. Together, we learned that the most profound connections aren't about blood or obligation, but about shared humanity, about seeing each other truly, without agenda. I've come to believe that my story, this painful journey, wasn't just for me. It was a lesson. A hard one, yes, but one that opened my eyes to a deeper truth. And I feel compelled to share it. Because perhaps, just perhaps, you felt something similar. That quiet sting of being overlooked. That slow realization that you're being diminished by those who should champion you. Maybe you faced your own betrayals, small or large, that leave you wondering where you stand, who you are. It's easy, isn't it, to lose your footing when the ground shifts beneath you. To feel like you have to shrink, to make yourself less, just to keep the peace, just to be loved. We do it for our children, for our partners, for our families. We want to be the light, the support, the silent foundation. But there's a line, a very fine line, between giving love and giving yourself away. And sometimes you only see that line clearly once you've crossed it. But remember what I said about finding strength. It's there, always. Maybe it's in a dusty old deed or a forgotten letter. Maybe it's in a quiet conversation with a true friend. Or maybe it's just in the quiet resolve that settles in your heart when you say, enough. That little voice that whispers, I matter, my story matters. I've shared my deepest truth with you, like I would with a cherished friend sitting right here on my porch. And I want to keep sharing stories like this, real stories that touch your heart, and I hope remind you of your own quiet power. Because connection, that's what really matters, isn't it? Knowing we're not alone in this grand, messy journey. It's a way for us to stay connected, to keep this conversation going. So if you want to keep receiving real stories like this, pay attention. YouTube might be unsubscribing you without warning. Confirm you're still subscribed to the channel and hit the notification bell. It's just a little gesture, a click of a button, but it means we can keep this thread alive, keep finding moments of quiet understanding, and keep reminding each other that our voices, our stories, our dignity are worth protecting. And that, my dear friend, is the truest gift life has ever given me. A quiet peace, a simple truth, and a connection, perhaps, with you.